Hello and welcome to Cheers to Fears, where you combine horror and alcohol for your entertainment.
Hello. Do you want to play a game?
Be food and drink and ghosts, and perhaps even a few murders. You're all invited.
Today we are making a drinking game for Insidious 2. Written and directed by the same people as the previous installment. Directing is James Wan, and the writer was Leigh Whannell.
After the horrific events of the previous installment, the Lamberts decide to stay with Josh's mom, Lorraine, since their house is a crime scene. While in the house, Renee and Lorraine start to notice that they are still being followed by malevolent entities. Lorraine takes initiative and turns to Tucker, Specs, and Elise's old friend Carl for help as they try to uncover why the Lamberts are still being followed.
Just a bit of a forewarning, the rules will have mild spoilers in them, but nothing that will take you away if this is your first time watching Insidious 2. Now on to the drinking rules.
Yeah, so of course our first rule, as always, is death. And this time around it gave us 7 sips in total.
There's some big ones off the top of my head. When Parker Crane was revealed to kill all those women, that was immediately mercied.
Exactly, yeah.
So that's 5 right there. And then you can even count Parker Crane, and I think the other one was maybe his mother?
Yeah.
Or maybe the fake out for Carl? Could have been one of the two.
True. And yeah, so if that scene didn't happen, it would have been very low. That helps give you a few drinks right away just for this rule. 7 deaths for an Insidious movie, to me, is shocking.
Yeah, it's quite a bit.
When you see that scene, you're like, oh, okay, yeah, that makes sense.
Now moving on to the next rule, which is scream, cries, and yells. And if that happens, you take a sip. That came to a total of 23 for this movie.
Yeah, it's about as expected. It's about the same as last installment, comparable at least.
Yeah, I think it is the same amount, actually.
Is it the exact same amount?
I believe is the exact same amount.
Yeah, okay, well, even better. Just the same as last movie. So, yeah, not much else to say. We'll just move right along to rule number 3, which, again, is jump scares. Whenever you see a jump scare, you take a sip, and this gave us 13 sips in this movie.
Yeah, 13 sips is less than we expected from an Insidious movie.
Yeah, it's still a decent amount of jump scares, but especially when you think about the first one, there was more. So, yeah, it's a little less than we expected, but still a good handful, I'd say.
Certainly. Let's move on to rule number 4. Whenever you see a photo or a video recording, you take a sip. And that came to a total of 13.
Yeah, and it's seen quite a bit, actually, especially in the beginning. Like, I'd say beginning, first act is when you see a lot of them. They're sprinkled throughout near the end too, but definitely in the beginning. And it's mostly like childhood photos from the past, or even like recordings of Josh when he was a little kid. Stuff like that is what you're looking for. So. Yeah.
The first scene, I think, is mercied because it shows all of the pictures of the bride in black. Yeah. Has a video recording going the entire time.
That's right, yeah. Yeah, so there is another scene that's mercied. But let's keep it going and go to rule number 5. That is whenever supernatural entity is seen. And this gave us 31 sips.
Yeah, again, quite a few. I guess it's worth noting that this is almost half a drink less than the previous installment. So that's right. It is quite a bit less, but again, 31 sips for a rule is still quite a bit.
Can't complain about it, and it's definitely the hardest rule in this drinking game yet again. And 31 sips is still a full can, so... You're drinking quite a bit for this rule, even with 31.
Of course. Let's go to rule number 6, which is whenever a door moves on its own, and that is a total of 18 sips.
Yeah, we honestly could have made this a rule for the entire franchise, but I think in this installment specifically, it's very prevalent.
It's extremely prevalent in this installment, of course.
Yeah. There's one scene that's mercied, I think, where all the doors just slam when Carl's in there.
When they're in Parker Crane's house?
Yeah. Yeah, there's that scene. And even apart from that, there's just a lot of doors randomly moving on their own. So, yeah, it was worth including for this one. You could include it for any of them, to be honest, but this one in particular, we decided to make it an official rule. But anyways, let's move on to rule number 7. It's whenever Elise is brought up or mentioned, and this gave us 18 sips.
Yeah, she is, of course, talked about quite a bit, and I guess it's also worth mentioning she died in the last one, but even with that being said, she was in a third of the movie.
Yeah, in the last third of the movie, we see her, like, in person. In the further, of course, not technically alive. She's almost in limbo, I guess, is kind of how you look at it. But I am glad that they found a way to include her in this movie because they killed her off in the first. You're like, knowing there's more, it's like, oh shit, I really liked Elise. I hope they make it work, and they did.
She's, I think, one of the brightest spots of the entire franchise.
Yeah, for sure.
A lot of people can say that, yeah.
Yeah.
Now on to a little bit of a unique rule, which is whenever Carl rolls his dice, and we came to a total of 10 sips with this rule.
Yeah, there's a few scenes where he rolls it multiple times. It is kind of a unique way to reach out to the ghosts or whatever, the dead. It's something we don't see very often. It is a little bit gimmicky, I'll say, but at least they're doing something new and not just trying to, do a seance or something.
Yeah, they're not just doing a weird Ouija board or something like that. They're doing something kind of unique.
A little bit different, exactly. Anyways, we'll keep going to rule number 9, and this is whenever Parker Crane is seen or mentioned, and this gave us 10 sips.
Yeah, so we learn about a little bit of his backstory, and I think he's, I'd say, the second most prevalent entity in the universe. So it's definitely interesting to hear his background and where he came from.
Yeah, I like that they kind of give us some more history of him, and that's kind of their focus in this installment, I guess. Yeah,
I guess that's one of James Wan's kinks too. It's deadly women. So, for example, we got Mary Shaw.
Specifically in like gowns, though.
And in gowns we have the nun as well. Yeah,
the nun. We have the person from Annabelle, the dress, the wedding dress or whatever. Yeah. So there's a lot of females in dresses or gowns and stuff.
He didn't direct La Llorona, but that could be another one.
Yeah, he produced it, right? Yeah.
For the last rule, we're bringing back a classic from the last movie, which is whenever the exterior of the house is seen, or a house rather, you take a sip, and that came to a total of 15.
Yeah, and not only is it a rule from the last drinking game, but I think it's a rule in a lot of our James Wan drinking games. It's a thing he likes to do. It's a stylistic choice, I guess, that he likes to do just to show off his settings, I guess. I don't know why he does it all the time, but it stands out. Once you notice it, you never forget it or unsee it. Yeah. So yeah, that's why we included it as a rule again. Well, that wraps up all the rules for this drinking game. The total amount of sips that we got for it was 158, which is equivalent to drinking about 5.5 standard 12-ounce cans based on our 30-sip per can scale. So it's another pretty difficult one.
Yeah. It's worth pointing out that this is almost the exact same as the first one. In a lot of ways. For example, it was, I believe, Scream, Cries, and Yells. We got the same amount.
Yep.
For drinking difficulty, it was, I think, 3 more sips. But the movie was 3 minutes longer, and I actually did the math, and it was 1.504 sips per minute for both movies, which is
wow.
You can't get any closer.
Yeah, that's pretty insane. One other rule we did debate on including was whenever Josh acts like unnatural or he's not acting like himself, he's acting a little off, and it gave us, we counted 12 sips for it, but it's kind of up to interpretation a lot, and it's a little bit of a gray area in some scenes where you don't know to count it or if you don't know if you should include it or not. So we just decided to scrap it and replace it with another rule.
Yeah, I feel like it would cause a lot of arguments, such as the scene where Josh is just looking at Dalton, and then Dalton's just like, "What?" And Josh says, "I'm just glad you're awake." People can interpret that definitely 2 ways.
Yeah, for sure. So we just decided, don't bother thinking about it too much and just have an easy drinking rule instead. So, yeah, we swapped it out.
Yeah. It is also reinstating that this is a pretty difficult drinking game, such as the first one.
Which we did make a drinking game for, and if you haven't watched it yet, go click up here. We'll link to it there. It's, it's basically the same drinking game as this, same difficulty, and even a lot of the same rules because we like to use some franchise rules just to make it easier. When you're watching the whole franchise, you don't have to remember a million different rules.
Of course, it does make it a little bit easier with that. Anyways, with all that being said, we hope you enjoyed our drinking game on Insidious 2. If you ended up playing the game alongside the movie, or if you have any other feedback suggestions, let us know in the comments below.
Make sure to like and subscribe to our channel so you don't miss our next video where we're going to be putting out a drink inspired from the Insidious franchise, and it'll be coming out sometime in the next couple days probably. Anyways, with that being said, thanks for tuning in, and this is us saying, cheers to fears.